all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brad Harris, and each week I'm joined by some of my favorite husky, hairy, huggable homos and friends to talk movies. Sometimes we review a current film, sometimes we tackle something classic. This week we are going full on current mode with a review of Shang-Chi, the newest outing from Marvel, of course, that being The Legend of the Ten Rings. Excited to chat about this film. It actually came out about a week and a half ago at this point, relative to when we recorded. But we had some scheduling things last week, and we took a little bit of a break last week. There was a holiday. We're allowed. But we're back in the saddle again and ready to talk. Let me introduce you to my fantastic co-hosts, Jim Pugliafico, the love of my life. I'm so lucky to podcast with you, babe. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing good, babe. Thanks for that amazing introduction. I've been good, ready to get back into talking about movies with you guys, and maybe a special guest treat tonight. We'll see. So let's go.
All right, excellent. Well, so glad you're here, babe. Will Lindis is in the house as well. The house being a figurative construct, not our actual house, although that would be really fun, Will, if you could just teleport the 2,000 miles here and we could do this in person. But welcome. How are you?
First of all, Brad, look towards your office door now. It's me.
Oh my God.
Will,
what are you doing here?
You know what? I've now decided. I've officially decided, Jim, at some point, I'm going to arrange some sort of like secret visit.
I'm down.
And we're gonna set this up, and I'm going to find a way of like being tucked away somewhere in your house at the start of an episode. I don't know how I'm gonna hide the fact that I'm in your house off the camera, but I'm gonna walk in and surprise Brad live on air. You heard it here first.
That would be awesome.
Absolutely going to happen.
I'm down to make that happen. I'm pretty good at hiding surprises.
Yeah, you are. It's very true, babe. Well, that does sound like fun, although I'll have to, I don't know, borrow someone's heart medication or something so I don't die of surprise.
Yeah, we wouldn't want that. That would
be bad.
We don't want like basically like video evidence of like your last.
All right. Well, that got really morbid all of a sudden, but okay.
Yep.
So Jim teased that we might have a special guest with us this week. We will go ahead and just say that's absolutely true. We do. This very handsome gentleman joins us from the Movie Mistrial podcast. Johannes, welcome. How's it going?
Very good. Thanks for having me. Speaking of surprises, I guess. I'm here.
You're the surprise.
Yeah.
Well, so glad that you could join us this week. Johannes, for any of our listeners who may not be familiar with your show, would you mind just telling us a little bit about the premise of your show, how it works, and maybe how people can find it?
Yeah. So Movie Mistrial is a show about the IMDb Top 250. And we essentially cross-examine that vast array of classic movies, essentially. And we started top-down. So each episode, my co-host and I are flipping a coin, and we decide who has to argue for or against that movie, which is interesting because sometimes you may like a movie and have to say all the bad things about it, or you may hate a movie and like all the good things. So we start with like 20 minutes of cross-examination, and then we have an informal discussion about the movie, what we liked, what we didn't like. It's been fun.
It's definitely a pretty cool premise. I was listening to the Dark Knight episode from I think one of your last few, and
yep.
It was interesting to return to a movie that I love, but also have to acknowledge there are some real things with that movie that maybe are not particularly great. So it was really interesting for me to hear that cross-examination and objections, Your Honor. That was really fun. So.
Yeah.
Very cool.
well, yeah, and I love the premise too. I mean, let's face it, there hasn't been really a perfect movie yet, except maybe the one we're going to talk. Who knows? Maybe the one we're going to talk about today will end up being perfect, or the next one after that. We'll see. But yeah, that's a really interesting premise. I missed or didn't know that you guys actually flipped the coin to see who was going to be the prosecuting attorney or defense attorney.
Yeah. And then sometimes it's both. Like, is Shawshank Redemption really the best movie of all time?
It's so good. It's good.
It's good.
It's good. It's good. It's very good. It's very good.
Well, Johannes, we are so jazzed to have you with us this week as we tackle Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. For those who are unfamiliar with the premise of our show, the way we do things around here, we like to talk about a film spoiler-free for 15, 20 minutes before we get into spoiler territory. So if for some reason you haven't yet seen Shang-Chi, it's been a week and a half since it came out. I think probably most people who wanted to see this have probably seen it at this point, but just in case, we will give you a spoiler warning before we rip that Band-Aid off. I want to give a quick shout out to Tony in the chat, who messaged last week about our review. It looks like he was able to make it this week. He says, hey there, Brad, Jim, Will, and Johannes. Hey, Tony. So glad that you're here.
Tony's back.
Always.
And yeah, I'm loving it.
Yeah. Me too. Always good to see you, Tony. Welcome. Well, Jim, Will, Johannes, how are we feeling? Is it time to jump into our main review?
I think so. Let's kick this thing into high gear.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's put on our jewelry and do it.
I don't have 10 magical rings, but I have 2 rings. Can I be?
Do we have 10 rings? I don't even think we have 10 rings among us.
Can I be Brad Lee in the Legend of the Two Rings?
Oh my God.
God,
it's early, guys. How are we already this punchy?
I blame Johannes's winning smile. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Well, then, why don't we go ahead and do this thing? I see we've got some folks who are joining us for the live chat. We don't want to keep them waiting any longer for what they are here to hear all about. So here we go. Our discussion of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. All right. Will, if you don't mind kicking us off, again, I imagine most people who wanted to see this film probably already have, so we probably don't need a super long intro, but if you don't mind just setting up the basic premise of the film and telling us a little bit about your experience seeing it, what you thought, is it worth checking out? Would you pass it by? What'd you think?
Absolutely. I'm going to read the IMDb description because it is just delightfully weird. Shang-Chi, the master of unarmed weaponry-based kung fu, is forced to confront his past after being drawn into the Ten Rings organization. A true description, yes, but they spend a good portion of the description just talking about the type of kung fu he does. I don't know. But that's what this film is. This is the newest MCU Marvel Universe movie based off of the popular character Shang-Chi from the comic books by Marvel. And it stars Simu Liu, who plays Shang-Chi. He was, as a young man, he was raised to be an assassin, and he's decided to give that life up and wants to live a more, I guess, normal life, more normal than, being an assassin. But the past has a way of catching up to us, right? And he's soon drawn back into that world, along with his sidekick in this, Awkwafina, who plays the Marvel's Katie, as they go on a globe-spanning adventure through martial arts and mysticism. I saw this one in theaters. I did get a chance to see this one theatrically. I don't know. It's still so weird, right? It's still such a weird experience to make that venture, to sort of do the mental calculus, to make sure okay, am I going to have a bunch of people around me? Do I have buffer seats? How does this work out? Unfortunately, the theater I see, they book buffer seats all around you, so I'm happy with that. How did I feel about this movie? I liked it a lot. I walked into this one not sure what the experience was going to be. The trailer itself felt a little milquetoast the trailers. You know, and I have a fun time with these movies. I tend to enjoy them quite a bit, but I thought this was going to be sort of like mid-tier, kind of at best, and I ended up liking this one probably a lot more than the trailers would have given me any right to do so. I think the martial arts, the fight scenes in this are a lot of fun. There's some that we won't be able to talk to until we get to the spoiler section, but there's one very heavily featured in the trailer on a bus. You know, you see that in the bus. In fact, it looks actually like it's not going to be a fun scene in the movie, like in the trailer. And gosh, when that scene hits in the movie, it really hits. There's a lot of cool flips, a lot of cool like wushu style like wire work throughout this movie. But it's not just fights. There's also a strong story about family and about kind of owning who you are and figuring out who you are, that plays not just through the main character but also through the through lines of a lot of the characters that interact with Shang-Chi in this. So narratively it works. From an action perspective it works. Visually there's some absolutely stunning stuff in this. I don't know, I really like this. I think this is, for the Marvel movies, I think this is probably lands at like mid-high tier or high mid-tier, whatever you want to call that particular range there. You know, there's ones that I like better. But I think this outshines quite a few of them. And again, I was not expecting this at all. I was expecting this one to be sort of like maybe right down the middle Marvel and nothing more. So I would strongly recommend checking this one out. If you're superheroed out, fine, you're superheroed out. And no matter what the movie is, if you're superheroed out, you know, no amount of recommendations are going to work for you. But I think there's enough that's different in this movie that even someone who is, you know, kind of tired of like capes and laser beams, I think the martial arts action here will still maybe have something for you. So yeah, check it out. 2 thumbs up.
All right. We got a big recommend from Will. Let's see what Jim thinks. Babe, did this movie hit for you as well as it did for Will?
This movie hits. Yeah. This definitely hits. Yeah, and you guys know, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again for those who, you know, for Johannes' sake, and maybe others who are listening for the first time. I'm not the biggest comic book movie fan, to be honest, and but I've seen a lot of them. Right, I've seen almost all of them with you guys, and you know, I think I can kind of give my perspective kind of from kind of outside the Marvel and DC world a little bit. I mean, I have a little bit of familiarity, but not as much as many of the folks that I talk to in our community and whatnot. So, but I really had a good time with this movie. Will, I think I'm kind of putting it right about the same spot you are with this, like low to mid, high tier, you know, or high mid tier when it comes to Marvel. This movie did show us some things in terms of like the action, basically, in this film. But in terms of story, I think it's pretty standard. To me, anyway, it seems like it's pretty standard, like origin, you know, superhero origin story kind of stuff, and pretty standard daddy issues origin story kind of stuff all over this thing, and that gets a little tiring after a while. Yeah, daddy issues, right? And I don't mean daddy issues.
I saw Brad perk up a little bit.
I don't mean daddy issues.
Oh, daddy, yeah.
I don't mean daddy issues in the bear sense. I just mean like father son, you know, contemptuous, you know, struggles and conflict. Yeah, Will, I'm not sure exactly which fight sequence you're talking about, but I think it's the one in the city, right, versus the one before that, kind of in the jungle, right?
Yeah, the one that I really liked was the one where it's I liked a lot of them, but the one that I think is fair to talk about now is the one that happens on the bus.
Yeah.
They're in the bus a lot.
It's all over the trailer, and yeah, that was pretty eye-popping stuff. The cast in this was great. We've got Michelle Yeoh, who I mean, I don't think she can really do anything bad. You mentioned Simu Liu and Awkwafina, who's, you know, her star is still rising quite a bit. She's getting like higher and higher profile roles, which is great. it's just a matter of time probably before she gets her own, superhero role in one of these films. Maybe, I don't know. Unless Katie is already a superhero, I don't know the canon, so I don't know if Katie is an actual like character from the comics or not that ends up with superpowers. But we got Ben Kingsley coming back from way back in the Marvel franchise. And yeah, I just love the whole cast in this thing. I thought it was great. Yeah, so that's kind of my thought. We saw it in the movie theater as well. Like you said, Will, it's every single time you have to make that decision. Like, are we going to go to the movie still? And our strategy when we go to the movies, sorry for this little aside, but our strategy when we go to the movies is we generally like to sit middle to front. I don't know if that makes any sense, but we kind of like to have that, or at least I do, kind of like to have that whole screen there, like right in front of us. Not front row, but, at least a few rows back, but definitely not toward the middle. And I think going more toward the front of the theater, even if the movie theater or the movie chain doesn't plan for buffer seats and block out buffer seats, we're almost kind of guaranteed that we're going to have at least one buffer seat. Matter of fact, most of the movies we've gone to lately, at least where we go, we've actually had like whole rows to ourselves practically. So that's been good. Including last night, which is a whole nother story.
We practically had a theater to ourselves last night.
Yeah, there were two other people in the theater last night. That's a whole nother thing we'll talk to you about.
Hashtag Malignant Monday.
Yeah, Malignant Monday. Yeah. Yeah, that was Shang-Chi we saw, of course, like a week and a half ago. So
yeah.
But yeah, to me, this is definitely see this movie. Is it available now on the Disney platform for a fee or no? Does anybody know? Or is it one of those 45-day window kind of things?
I don't think it is on Disney Plus yet. I think this is the first one of the major kind of like Disney movies that have come out in the pandemic where they decided to do theatrical only, since Black Widow was, both.
Tony in chat also says no. And I think the model they're using is like they release in theaters and then it's a 45-day window and then they go ahead and release on the platforms.
A lot of them are doing that kind of like that quick turnaround when they are doing that. Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to see Shang-Chi, I guess you got to kind of brave the movie theater and either that or wait. And either way is fine. It's whatever your comfort level is. But I say whether you can get out to the movies, I'd say see it. And if you can't, definitely put it in your queue for when it's streaming. It's definitely worth it.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you for that. Angel. Oh my gosh. Hello, Angel. So good to see you. He said this is actually an experiment, which some of the stars objected to. I know there was some controversy with Black Widow, being in theaters and available for streaming. In fact, Scarlett Johansson is in the middle of suing Disney and, not exactly a great situation. So I'm interested to see, what's going to happen with this kind of staggered release like this.
Yeah, and Angel makes a really good point. There was a bit of a dust up on this one on Twitter. Some of the stars, after Marvel came out and said like, "Hey, this one's an experiment with the theatrical only," some of the stars of Shang-Chi said, "Hey, it feels a little like not great to call like the first of these movies to have like an Asian like lead as a superhero an experiment. It's a little tone deaf." And so which was, I don't think that was the context necessarily that it was original, the statement was meant, but at the same time, intention versus how things land, it's a whole different conversation. But
right.
Yeah, that was a bit of a dust up that happened around this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Johannes, I got to say, I think we're dying to hear your thoughts about what you thought about Shang-Chi. How did this movie maybe land for you?
Yeah, I also saw it in the theater. I live close to a independent local theater. I was able to see it in a grand auditorium of like 650 seats, I think. So it was plenty of space for everybody to move around, which is great. Love the theater. I like the movie a lot. I think it's very pretty. I think it's interesting to me that you bring up like superhero movies, because I don't think it necessarily feels like a superhero movie. It's very contrary to a lot of the Marvel stuff, and I feel like the Marvel fatigue that I can totally relate to, Jim, is kind of alleviated in this one.
Perhaps. Let's keep going. We're gonna talk about that.
We'll talk about that. But so just based on that, I'm usually in the same camp of like another Marvel movie, fun. I enjoyed this one. I think it's always good to see San Francisco in a movie, be it the real San Francisco or Sydney jumping in. But it's always great to see it. And I thought it was quite bold to start a movie in not English and with subtitles. I think that wasn't a good way to get into the lore of this film. And like Will mentioned, it's and Jim as well. It's ultimately it's kind of a story about a family, in a sense, and kind of the daddy issues. So while that might be a little kind of drawn out and kind of old in a way, like we've done that before, I think they found something interesting in terms of fighting, where they were very opposites, and like interesting takes on kind of telling that story. So I think that there's a lot there that's kind of outside of the normal Marvel stuff that's worthwhile to watch. So yeah, I'd recommend it.
So Johannes, it's interesting that you mentioned the Marvel fatigue and kind of what this film does to maybe abate that a little bit. I got to be honest, I've been feeling that fatigue for the last like 3 years now. It's just, it's so ambitious to have so many films and have so many of them be interconnected. And obviously they're setting Shang-Chi up to be a big part of this new phase of the Marvel films. So going in for me, I'm just like, great, phase 4, let's go. But I was actually really surprised by this film. I really enjoyed it a lot. I don't know. I was a little ambivalent about Awkwafina going in just because, I don't know, a little of her goes a long way for me. I loved her in The Farewell. She was phenomenal in that.
Yes.
But we recently had her in Raya and the Last Dragon, and that was real hit or miss for me. And that was like the last taste of Awkwafina I had in my mouth. So I'm like, where's this going to go? She ended up being one of my favorite parts of the whole damn movie. I thought she was so good in this. I just a few things I want to call out in addition to what you folks have already said, because I don't want to belabor the point. I do want to get us to spoilers. But I'm so glad that we saw this in a movie theater, because the visuals and the sound are fucking fantastic. Excuse my language so earlier in the show. But they really, really are. I know. Brad dropping an F-bomb, that never happens.
What the fuck?
We are an explicit podcast. I have to click that explicit radio button now.
We're earning our E for explicit.
Yeah, right.
But the visuals and sound are they're incredible. From the magic of the rings to, the fighting styles seen on screen, to even just the sound editing, like, a bunch of rumbly bass at just the right moment. I feel like so many films lean on just heavy bass and crashes and thumps, and it's just like an unending stream of that stuff. I felt like this movie really chose its moments on where to use those things. So it was all, punching up where I'm concerned. Like it just made everything better. This was not one of those action movies where I fall asleep in the action, because it's just a constant stream of, whatever. So this is absolutely a big recommend for me as well. Go out and see this in theaters. If you feel safe, if it's okay to do so, make sure you do. Otherwise, it sounds like this is going to be available on streaming in about a month or so, and you can check it out then. So big win for Marvel, in my opinion. I'm kind of looking forward. Am I really saying this? I'm kind of looking forward to more Marvel movies because of this film. Whether that pans out with what we get next when, Eternals comes up, We'll see. But yeah, this was a positive for me. So
hey, looks like the jury was in agreement on this one.
Yeah. I think we all probably no mistrial here. I think it's an open and shut case. Right? So,
well, I have critiques.
Yeah. Oh, I do too.
We do too. But you can still be not guilty, but maybe still have opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to get back to Johannes's point, and it was a very good point. That this movie didn't, I mentioned superhero movies and the superhero fatigue, and this movie, I think, tried to break the mold a little bit by doing some things different, both in its styling, not necessarily its story, but I think the cultural wrapping that this film is in kind of sets it apart from a lot of the other Marvel films, just in its portrayal of the culture, right? And this is based in China, right? Is some of this movie? Is it China, or is it like fictional China, like China? It's real China, right? Do they mention Chinese cities, or I don't know?
Well, they are in a Chinese city in one part of the film.
Yeah.
It's in the trailer, so I feel like that's not a spoiler.
Okay, I was tap dancing a little bit.
Is it? I don't know. Yeah,
it is. It is. Yeah,
it's real China, but also with some like fictionalized elements.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think we'll get into that maybe more in spoilers, because I think part of that whole wrapping, I've seen a couple of shots at this movie thrown at this movie for just that, and we'll talk about that maybe a little bit in spoilers, because I don't want to give anything away, but you're right, Johannes. I think the movie does feel a little bit different in that that plus I think we don't see a ton of Shang-Chi is a strong hero, right? I don't recall. We'll talk about like superpowers and stuff like that when we get kind of more into spoilers.
I think we're getting there. I think we're getting to that time. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like at this point we're kind of tap dancing around spoilers, which to me is usually the point. We just need to fucking get in there and talk about it. Yeah. Will, Jim, Johannes, what do you guys think? Are we ready for spoilers, or was there anything else non-spoilery you have to get out first?
No, I don't think so.
Before we go, it's like beef or vegetarian, I guess it would be a good segue.
Oh yeah.
Nice. I love it. All right. Well, listen, we're going to go ahead and take the cap off this thing. We are going to let the spoilers out like the 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo. There's the throwback reference for you. If you value your virginal innocence where the plot of this film is concerned, if you haven't seen it yet, this is your chance to walk away for the next 38 minutes and 49 seconds. I'm just kidding. We're not really that planned out. And come on back at the end if you want to hear how you can interface again with the Movie Mistrial podcast, and also hear about how you can connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. But I'm done awkwardly rambling. Spoilers are totally good to go. Jim, did you want to kick this one off? Because I sensed there were some things you wanted to say, but you couldn't.
I've done a lot of talking. I just want to say two things. One is I love that they inserted part of kind of a kaiju movie toward the end of this movie with the dragon battle at the end. I thought was pretty awesome. It felt to me kind of like kaiju stuff. And that, of course, thrilled the kaiju fan in me a lot. But I also wanted to mention, like, the whole the shots that I've seen thrown at this movie. I've seen both this movie praised for its, it's all, Asian cast, and what it's done to try to be authentic, I guess, to its cultural leanings. But I've also seen the other side of that coin is people have taken shots at this movie because they feel that in some ways it's perpetuating some stereotypes, and but I take issue with that, because I think there's a difference between showcasing a culture and perpetuating stereotypes, and maybe it's a finer line, but it is there when you think about it. When it even Angel in the chat says it's mythic China, and it comes around this issue of, mythical, the mythical Far East and the things that are associated with that. And do we have to have that in a movie that wants to showcase, Asian culture,
I'm with you, Jim, and I will say this from the perspective of what the four of us are about to talk about is something that is not a lived experience for any of the four of us. So
of course,
please, disclaimer. Literally
just
everything I'm about to say
it is probably problematic.
Yeah. But they had they had to thread a very specific needle on this one, because the roots of this character and some of the other characters that appear in here within the comics are, I would say, much more problematic overall. First of all, the father is not who would eventually be sort of like the take on the Mandarin. It was a character named Fu Manchu in the comics, and it plays off of much more of like sort of like the 70s martial arts exploitation style themes that were kind of popular in those types of movies, were just sort of like kind of recycled into the comics. So you had to pull that character out of that while also not completely divorcing the character from the core of what they are. Same thing with Mandarin. We saw the Mandarin show up in Iron Man 3 in sort of like a Whiplash style, like a course correction there, where they made the Ben Kingsley characters a fake one, which upset some comic book fans who were a big fan of like the classic, long mustache, like wiggling his tin rings and laughing maniacally version of the character. I think they did a really good job of walking that back while also not walking it back all of the way. They found a way of saying they even made they made this fictional character of the Mandarin off of me, huh? Anyway, they lampshaded it well. They made the character still feel like at his heart, kind of matched some of the stuff that I felt like from the comics, but also modernized it quite a bit. I think that whenever you start to deal with mysticism or kind of like non-real world cultural elements, I think you do sometimes run the risk of it being a little bit flight of fancy-ish, and maybe that's legitimate here, but at the same time, I mean, it's not like we can have a single damn Superman movie without it having to be a Jesus allegory too, from a very Western perspective too, so I think certain cultural elements are always going to appear in certain types of work. So it all comes down to, at the end, were the people who made this, were they speaking from their lived experience based on the filmmaker and everything the cast and crew have said? I think yes. Did they handle it respectfully, or at least the attempt thereof? I think yes. Did they do as good a job as possible to thread the needle? I think yes. So for me, it's a win from the perspective of, I think they did, they dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's that they could.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the whole thing with the Mandarin. We actually had to watch about 45 minutes of YouTube videos after we saw the movie to refresh ourselves on what had happened in Iron Man 3, because it had been so long since we saw that. And I guess we missed a short starring Ben Kingsley as the Mandarin character in prison, which explained... Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing. Apparently, it was a DVD extra or something. So we got caught up afterward, but we were kind of scratching our heads a little bit as to well, wait. So he was the actual Mandarin, but he's not called the Mandarin, but he has the rings that we thought the Mandarin would have in Iron Man 3. Okay, we got it. We got there, but it took a little bit. So.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen Iron Man 3, to be honest. So I was completely out of the water. I was like, okay, let's roll with this.
Right. And my point was, after seeing this movie, and I had seen Iron Man 3, I'm like, why was the Ben Kingsley character even in this movie?
Yeah.
I'm like, he didn't do a lot in the movie itself. He was just there to kind of explain something or retcon something, I think, that Marvel wanted to do. But even then, it didn't really make much sense to me in terms of that retconning, because I think, well, I don't want to. Can we give spoilers for Iron Man 3? I don't even know.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, that movie's
that was phase. That was phase 1, Jim.
So
phase
you had
1. Spoilers
you
are
had Ben
okay.
Kingsley playing, masquerading as the Mandarin, and then being revealed that he's just an actor hired by Guy Pearce, who was supposedly the real Mandarin in that movie, who eventually gets killed, right? In Iron Man 3?
I think that orange glowing psoriasis thing like took over,
So I don't know why that isn't just the end of, that whole thing, why we needed Ben Kingsley to bring that character.
I think you hit the nail on the head. I think they had to walk that back and they had to explain some things. And so, having him be there maybe was essential in their mind. Making him such a comic relief character, though, was kind of I don't know. We talked about criticisms earlier, Johannes. I think that's one for me. I think he's a fun character, but I could have used about 8 less jokes with the funny animal and all that stuff. I felt like that kind of took away from some of this,
from the strength of the movie.
Yeah, give me a little of that, please. Yes, absolutely. But I felt like we didn't need as much.
Yeah, and I think at the core, Aquafina's character is kind of the comic relief in the beginning, right? And then the fake Mandarin is taking over, and Snarkamy is like, okay, that animal Morris, that's purely just merch, right?
Yeah.
So okay, we got to figure out how to tie this thing in. So okay, let's tie to the. So yeah, it feels very forced, I think, because it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I think you could have had the same sort of narrative. Because I agree. If I were to leverage a criticism, I think I think the inclusion of the character was a good idea from the perspective of you have to sort of explain why you had a Mandarin, now you have a different Mandarin, even though none of them are, this one's not called the Mandarin. People who have read the comics are at least going to say well, what the hell are you even doing here? So by doing that, you can sort of cross that bridge. But I think you could have just as easily had the exact same scene when we're in spoilers now, when they are in the car and getting ready to do their stuff. Maybe if he just says oh yeah, and Morris says that the forest is going to eat us. Wait, the forest is going to eat us. Bye guys. You could have had him dip out right there because he didn't want to, and have him his arc be just sort of that little 20 minutes of the movie.
Yes,
perfectly fine.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. James, oh my gosh, James, so great to see you, handsome. James says the Mandarin was there to play dead with a mythical creature.
I suppose, yeah.
That whole arc, that whole buildup was to pay off that one joke. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Maybe we could say he was there for marketing and products, but what's the word I'm looking for? You said it, Johannes. The animal creature, right? Merchandising, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know who's buying that merch, to be honest with you. I don't think the character even was cute enough or did enough to.
I don't know. If there's a big plushie of him out there, I might be tempted. I use big plushies as body pillows. I have a giant 4-foot Appa from Avatar: The Last Airbender. Yeah. He's so soft and snuggly. So they'd probably win me over, Jim, but I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Well, I'll tell you what, Brad, and granted this is what I'm about to say is technically audio, a podcast audio hell, because I'm about to explain a picture to our listeners right now. But I just put a big link in our chat as we're talking. If you just do a search for Morris Shang-Chi plush, there are a lot of options, some of which made by Disney, some of which made by a bunch of different companies, and there's even some Etsy ones. So not only does it exist, it exists by the buttload.
Yeah. Well, speaking of creatures, Jim, you mentioned that this movie kind of becomes a kaiju film at one point, right? After Shang-Chi gets the rings and his dad dies, he's zipping around between the luck dragon and the abomination. Sean in the chat says, I loved how they brought back the Abomination. The character looked really, really good. Yeah, that was crazy, awesome, and intense. And again, that's where the visuals and sound I was talking about earlier really kick in here. Watching these two titans, I mean, that's what I'm going to call them from the Godzilla movies, I guess, do their thing and battle it out was just, it was visceral, man. I loved it.
Yeah. Go ahead, Johannes.
That's where the movie lost me, honestly. Like,
okay,
really? Okay,
let's talk about it.
Yeah, that's where it really lost me, because, like I said in the beginning, like I feel like at the core, it's a movie about the relationship between Shang-Chi and his father, right? And then ultimately, it's his father trying to overcome grief in a way, right? And I feel like that the Kaiju Battle essentially is a huge distraction from the heart and the core of this thing. And I think you could have still brought the dragon out, in the battle against his father, still having the rings, I guess. I think, and still have a compelling kind of finale to this whole thing. It lost me. Like as soon as the bad monsters came out, I was just kind of it fell off a cliff for me.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, and Brad will attest to this. Like usually in the climactic battle scenes in a lot of these movies, you can, Transformers, other Marvel movies like Endgame and all that stuff, when everyone's bashing and clanging, I'll totally check out and be like falling asleep during those scenes, because it's just a lot of shit happening on the screen without really furthering the story much at all. It's just one conflict. And all of the commotion kind of puts me to sleep. But in this, maybe because I'm a kaiju fan, I kind of like the designs of these two creatures, and I was interested in that. I don't think it went on that long, but I know these movies have to have their big, they have to have their big climax. So whether it was the villagers fighting against, maybe it could have been just the villagers trying to take the dragon, and what were the little creatures called? I forget what they were called. The little ones that came out with the big dragon.
Did they have a name?
They did.
Okay.
They were like reapers or something like that.
Yeah, he was the dweller in darkness, and they were
the soul eaters.
Soul eaters, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Soul eaters. I think soul eaters. I think they're made by Dr. Scholl's. I think. Well, I'm mixing two things up: soul and odor eaters. Never mind.
I think the thing that really made that helped the ending there, because I do think that, the most compelling part of the Shang-Chi fight was against his father, who, by the way, I don't know that we've really spent enough time talking about this, about just how amazing Tony Leung did on with that role.
Oh my god,
absolutely stellar there. But I think what helped me was that there was a subplot that got to play out during that kaiju fight as well, and it's the Aquafina one, and it worked for me, and I wasn't expecting it to. This was a character who was. Her subplot in this is she was sort of an aimless tagger-on, right? Like she was, her family is sort of on her for like not sticking with any one thing. And she decides sort of in this moment, like, that she's going to try this, she's going to commit to learning this thing before the big fight. And she gets to like, she lands like one good arrow, and it's like an important one, it doesn't take too long out of it, but it's this little mini storyline that plays through there that I think works. And I think the fact that you have that woven through while Shang-Chi is over fighting his father, and they're going back and forth. And then when it comes back to the final, like the big fight with the Dweller in Darkness itself, they've spent so much time kind of doing the other stuff that they only have to have a few like bang clang, charging my Kamehamehas up to kind of go the last little part of it. So I do agree that I do feel that the fact that the father's plot was sort of, once that was done, there was still a little bit more climax left to do. So it makes Shang-Chi final victory a little bit less compelling, because he's already had his kind of victory a little bit earlier. I do agree with that though, Johannes. Like, you know, it does lose a bit of steam there.
I think nice choice of words with aimless, by the way. I appreciate that. I mean, who knew that, you know, being a valet, like, it's very conducive to being a kick-ass archer. Again, I felt it was very convenient how fast, you know.
Well, I mean, come on. As soon as she picked up the bow and arrow and was getting taught how to shoot it, did we not know what was going to come toward the end of the movie?
Well, listen. At least she got a little training. Shang-Chi just got the rings and automatically knew how to like use them and do all these amazing things with them. I would think if you just got these magical rings, you would inherently be like, what do these do? How do I make this work?
But even before that, though, let's talk about that, right?
He had martial arts training, but
yeah, he was an amazing fighter.
But I don't think we saw that he used the rings before. That's what I'm talking about. Like making the rings fly around and like go into the dweller and then like blow it up. And
it's in his blood.
Oh, okay.
It's in his blood.
Genetic memory.
It's in his blood. It wasn't, you know. Come on.
I mean, I think you can actually like argue that away because it's his training is coming from his father's side, right? And then the way
fighting training, right?
The fighting training is coming from his father's side, and then he's picking up his mother's side of fighting from the aunt, I think, right? And then that allows him to combine powers of both. Allows him to overcome his father. And I think you can argue that, like, with that knowledge of both sides of good and evil, you know, in air quotes.
Your Honor, I object.
Please.
You know, I what I like about it, and yeah, I don't know that the movie necessarily like. I'll say that we're probably having to do a little bit of the work for the movie in that case, as a, you know, and you know, but I think there is something that thematically is nice about this guy who was more attached to sort of like his mother until she died, and then he was raised by his father until he realized what he had been turned into, and then fled and was a part of basically neither of their worlds. And now he is fighting his father in his mother's homeland, and he sort of is combining their styles. He uses her martial arts to stop the rings, and then he absorbs the rings and uses his dad's fight. I think, you know, if we do a little bit of the work for the movie, I think thematically it does work. But yeah. But Brad, your point still stands. Like it was like going back to the convenient point, you know, he is just like, cool rings, blast.
I mean, couldn't we get a 2-minute training montage of him learning to use the rings in the middle of the fight? I don't know. It's an epic. Yeah,
you know what I've learned from this movie?
Rings.
Don't fuck with valets. Seriously. They will beat you up. They will shoot arrows at you. They'll steal your rings. They'll use your rings to beat you up. Don't mess with valets.
Well, especially San Francisco valets. I mean,
yeah, San Francisco valet.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up because that was going to be my next thing to mention because we hadn't mentioned it yet. Was Tony Leung in this movie? That man. I mean, you can label me as a chaser, right? I tend to be attracted to bigger men, but that man is beautiful. You got to admit, like he has, like the camera loves his face, and I mean the guy. I love all his movies, all of the Wong Kar-wai movies, right? Let's see. We had Chungking Express, we had Happy Together, In the Mood for Love. Not a Wong Kar-wai movie, I don't think, or maybe it was. It was The Grandmaster.
Yep.
The Grandmaster, which I loved. And by the way, it looked to me like a lot of the fighting sequences that weren't actual fighting, but kind of like the forms that they do were lifted from like directly from some of those movies, and they're fantastic. But I love Tony Leung. I'll watch anything he's in, and the guy is amazing.
Speaking of hot, can we just take a moment to appreciate the hotness that is Razor Fist with his beautiful beard and those piercing eyes and the giant sword that he has for a hand. I would let him go to town on me any day. Whoa.
Germany represents.
Brad, there's a knocking at your door. Razor Fist is there. He detaches the sword, reaches
I don't
into
even
a
want
case,
to. Yeah.
attaches something else,
Something.
and walks in. We're
As
already
long-
E, but I'm not going to go for X.
Listen, as long as I get to do certain things before the craziness happens, and I may or may not die, it'll be fine. So
This
there
is
you go.
this is your episode of What If. You can write whatever you want. I will say just a very minor moment that I liked in this movie quite a bit. So we got to see in that kind of like the underground fighting thing, we got to see the Abomination, who we haven't seen since the Hulk. And then we got to see him fighting Wong from the Doctor Strange. And I really liked, I mean, it was, just a quick little like reference of two characters. I liked the way that fight ended. Like, it was a fun use of that power. Like, it was cool to see. And again, it didn't take like 45 minutes in the middle of the movie. It was just a quick little scene to sort of like set the tone, but it had a fun moment. And then it had a fun little payoff later on when they're sort of like talking backstage. I liked all of that. That was good. That
was the fighting ring in the city. I forget which city it was.
Yeah. When Wong basically uses his little like portal thing to like make Abomination punch himself out. Mm-hmm. That was fun. That was a cute use of that little portal.
And like Sean said earlier, they did a really good job with the Abomination in this film too, right? Like he looked really good. Again, sound editing, like when he was punching and hitting that final punch, like you could feel just like this wall of sound hit you. And it's like, oh my God, is that what it's like to, be there when this huge hulking thing like just goes to town? It was great, but obviously they're setting up a lot, I think, for Doctor Strange, right? The new film that's coming, the Multiverse of Madness. Is Abomination going to be like fighting with them? Is he going to be involved somehow? Because he went through the portal with.
He did go through with Wong,
Yeah. So I don't know if he's going to show up again, but what did you guys think of the stinger at the end, which really was like a whole extra scene, not even a stinger, where like they're all in was that Doctor Strange's library? I was trying to figure out where exactly that was, but
refresh my memory.
Yeah. So at the end, we basically have a moment where like, to put kind of like the quick thought on it, like the Doctor Strange and specifically Wong, they're basically making the pitch of like, like, hey, you can do more than what you're doing right now, and like, basically setting up like you had this sort of solo adventure in your own little corner of the world, but there's a whole Marvel universe out there that you're now a part of. And what I liked about that scene, just going to a little moment, is it's like, okay, cool, it lampshades like, like some future involvement. Doctor Strange obviously is going to be a big part of this next phase. In fact, they've been hitting him very hard with the like in the What If episodes too, like, like they're reminding us very heavily how important Doctor Strange is. But it ended on the joke of the and then going again, getting drunk and singing karaoke. I like that. It felt like it had the same energy for me, honestly, less of like setting up like some intricate storyline that I need to know. Right. It was like the new shawarma scene for me.
Shawarma.
Like it was just a fun little moment with the characters.
Now I remember the karaoke that otherwise it totally left. Remember, it's been a week and a half, so
it has. Yeah. Hey, real quick, random comment alert from Tony. Tony says, Johannes's eyes are dreamy.
Yep.
They are very nice eyes.
You've got fans out there.
We're objectifying you, Johannes. I hope you don't mind.
Keep going.
Yeah, that's part of the deal. That's part of the deal. Brad, do you not tell all guests that you may be objectified strongly on the show?
It's part of
No,
your appearance
but
contract.
I didn't say that. Maybe I should start putting that in. But maybe I do pre-screen a little bit.
You might.
What?
I know, right?
Brad? No.
Listen, we have another comment from Tony that I really wanted to go to about Abomination. He says Abomination will show up in She-Hulk as well. I know a lot of fanboys are losing their shit right now in a bad way over She-Hulk, which I don't get. Come on, it's 2021. But I didn't know that Abomination was going to show up there. So that's really cool to hear. I would love to see more of the Abomination. And give me some motherfucking She-Hulk. I cannot wait.
Yeah, here for
That's a new one on me.
She-Hulk is, I think she's one of like just the great Marvel comic characters who hasn't made it over to television or movies yet. In fact, she pretty much the whole thing that Deadpool is known for, about the whole like breaking the fourth wall and kind of looking over and like talking to the audience. Like She-Hulk comics were doing that like way before like Deadpool was ever like first appeared. So nothing, no shade against Deadpool. Ryan Reynolds does a lot of fun with that, but just like, I mean, a lot of the people, Brad, to your point, who are losing their shit over like, and I've seen those comments like, they're so woke, they have to make like a female Hulk. Stan Lee would roll over in his grave. Stan Lee
created her
character in 1980. This character is 40 years old at this point. I don't get it. So bring it on. Give me Tatiana Maslany as the Jennifer Walters. I am here for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a new one on me. I just hadn't heard of She-Hulk before.
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty.
I couldn't imagine it. Not that I couldn't imagine it, because that world is so broad and deep, that I haven't explored. Just
imagine a Hulk who, yes, she's female, but like instead of being like mindless, like Hulk smash, like if she was like funny, articulate, and a lawyer.
Yeah,
that's what you have to look forward to. Imagine. I don't know what the show is going to be like, but like if they want to get the tone right, this is going to be like Ally McBeal, but with superheroes. Like that's what She-Hulk could very well be, and if they wanted to kind of get the tone right.
I've been searching my soul tonight, and I think I just found it. I love it when we can work in an Ally McBeal reference. It's always good times. So I know, right? Dancing Baby, that was the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just to steer things back to Shang-Chi for a little while. What did you folks think of the whole 10 Rings organization that the sister ends up taking over? Is that organization going to end up playing a big role in future films, you think?
Probably, right? I mean, that's like the final scene, essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, they haven't had a big role up to now, right? They've had a role, but not a big role. I mean, they showed up very briefly, right? In the very first movie, right? In the first Iron Man. Yes?
Yeah, they were in Iron Man. Yep.
Yeah. But, and then nothing. Well, I don't know. Nothing. But
Angel says that she was dismantling it. But I thought, didn't they show her like on the throne or whatever? And she's like, let's get this party started. Let's get to work.
So that's the thing. Like, because she said she was going to dismantle it. That's what she was going to do. But when she sits there on the throne, it basically gives you the idea of like, okay, maybe she has other motives in store here. As far as like what role they'll play in the future, it's hard to tell. I mean, obviously, like the 10 Rings is not going to be like the next Thanos
Hydra
or something like that, like it's not going to be like the core element, but I think that it's world building, right? It builds out like an additional threat the same way, Jim, actually you hit the nail on the head when you said Hydra, when the whole Hydra reveal happened, it had a bit of a shockwave that affected future movies, even in minor ways. Now Nick Fury is less able to come in and like save the day on a giant like spaceship because of everything that happened there. So I think that's what this is here. Like, actually, William has a comment here. At the end, they always say like Shang-Chi will return, Captain Marvel will return, but it popped up and it said the 10 rings will returin at the end. That's a super good point.
Yeah, and that could mean a few different things, right?
It could mean
it could mean Shang-Chi and his 10 rings. It could be the organization. Angel says, unless there was an end credit scene I missed. Friend, I love and adore you. I hate to tell you this, but you did miss an end credit scene, it looks like. We see the sister sitting on the throne of the 10 rings, which are very much still doing their thing. In fact, there's like an all-female like fighting force doing their thing out in the courtyard, and she's like, let's get started, or something to that effect.
Yep.
Intimating that she is now in control. She is the head power in charge of the 10 rings. So you may want to like sneak back into the movies after you see something else, and then just like pop into the end of Shang-Chi to see that scene.
I want to look. I don't want to get into organized crime. I want to say this loud and clear up front. I do not want to get into organized crime. If anyone you can play this later on in my trial probably, but me no to organized crime. But if I were, I would 100% want to have teams of synchronized martial artists doing fights around me at any given time. Like that's the type of crime boss I want. I don't want to do the crime. I just want the flair and the panache of having people going,
maybe
exact perfect.
Just join a karate class, Will. Just join a karate class.
I guess I could join a karate class.
What? No. What if you just rent some office space from them, Will?
I could rent some office space. So to actually both those ideas, what if I get a throne and I just go down to the local strip mall dojo and just sit on a throne as the yellow belts are yeah. I as soon as I say it, I realize a lot of reasons why I shouldn't do this.
I was gonna say maybe rethink that a little bit.
Sensei will.
I might get written out of the third season of Cobra Kai if I were to.
I think you might. I think you might. So, Johannes, we couldn't have you on this show without putting you on the spot a little bit, but I promise this is an easy one, I hope. In your role as either, defense attorney
proponent or a
prosecutor, what do you think the biggest crime this movie commits is, in your opinion?
I mean, there's a couple of things I can nitpick. I think the certain length is kind of a concern, and I personally think that the Kaiju Battle is one of them. The battle in with Abomination that could also be cut. That feels fan servicey a little bit. I think some of the writing is bad, like what I alluded to with the veggie or beef thing. That was just eye-rolling inducing, and it was just bad, I thought, because it's so unrealistic too. We ran out of all the meals. Yeah, right. So I think I would probably argue against this in those kind of lines, because I think a lot of the strong points are most of the acting, the visuals. This is a very exposition-heavy movie, but I felt like they did a good job of breaking it up into a lot of smaller chunks, and then also visually breaking it up. One of the standout scenes for me was the beautiful big carved mural that they walked past to kind of explain that super baddie monster at the end. Right,
that was pretty cool.
And that was cool. Yeah. That's and again, I think that goes back to the culture, that they really talk about. So it's it hits a lot of things like that. I think there's a lot of convenience in there. One thing that came to mind was the pendants that the MacGuffins essentially, right? That get the whole thing started, where it's said, well, with this you will always find home, but then it turns out you need to have both of them, which is
right
weird. and so there's little things like that where it's very convenient and it works while it's in the flow of the movie. But if you think about it too much, it's that's odd.
You know, it's interesting, Johannes, that you mentioned that plane scene because I think you're absolutely right. The joke with the we're out of vegetarian, we're out of this did run a little long. One thing I did like about that scene, though, is I think it finally solved a question that a lot of people had in terms of how do you actually pronounce Shang-Chi, right? And it a lot of people were asking this, and it was good that this was being asked. We got a whole scene describing actually how to correctly pronounce it. I think a lot of people are still falling into the trap of Shang-Chi because that's just how we're used to seeing it and phoneticizing it. But it's good to know that it is Shang, like Sean, C. Shang-Chi.
Yeah, we can argue about that. We're going to have
Let's
to go back and rewatch the
argue
movie.
Let's argue it.
All right, my pronunciation. Everybody, their pronunciation. Ready? Go ahead, Brad. Yours is
Shang-Chi.
Mine is Shang-Chi.
Yeah, mine is somewhere right in between. It's like Shang-Chi, like it's the
It's
C,
more of a
but there's like
CH
a
than
little,
an SH.
It's a little bit more of a. I think it's more of an SH, but like you kind of swallow the H a little bit to get the pronunciation right. So I think Brad's is probably the closest. You know.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm just going off of what Johannes, I thought I heard in the film. Johannes, what's your pronunciation?
I'd say Shang-Chi, I guess.
Yeah.
Shang-Chi.
I'm the odd man out. Okay.
Well,
I will be proven wrong on rewatch, probably.
Well, don't feel bad because at the end of the movie, Wong is like, Shang-Chi, come with us. And I'm like, we had a whole scene saying it was Shang, not Shang. What are you doing?
Oh, I didn't catch that. Good.
Yeah.
I didn't catch the pronunciation there. Interesting.
I was like, what are you doing? Yeah.
But your thoughts on the humor, like that scene where they inserted the jokey scene on the airplane, it kind of rankles me a little bit. It didn't bother me so much in that part of the movie because the movie really hadn't gotten very serious at all at that point. I mean, it was still kind of, we're car valets, and oh my God, we're now stuck in this adventure together, and everything's still kind of coming together. So it in that part of the movie, I think it worked fine. But have you guys seen the Eternals trailer?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a joke at the end of that trailer that, like, why did they put that in there? I don't understand. The IKEA joke? Fall collection, IKEA. We know when he whacks the table, he says, the table must be vibranium, and he cracks it. And the guy looks over and says, fall collection, IKEA. And I'm like, there was nothing in that trailer that was anything like that tone at all. And then they tagged that on. Yeah. It just felt really weird. And they have a tendency to do this stuff. I don't know why.
I think the I agree that the writing on the plane was like, let me backtracking. The writing of like the kind of the humor and the jokes on the plane was not great. I think that the humor was good there. I think we needed to see, like, the purpose of these scenes and the purpose of any banter between characters is to establish rapport, so that when these characters are like risking their lives for later on, we understand why they like each other. So I like that they were joking with each other and we got to see how they did it.
Yeah.
I wish that the jokes were a little funnier. Like that. So and I do have to say, as a vegetarian, if ever I'm on a plane and I order vegetarian and they say, "Oh, sorry, you're gonna have to eat the beef," that's not gonna be okay by me. That's not. And also I don't think that's ever gonna happen. Like right. Usually I'm good. Usually the chicken and the beef get eaten first, just like based on my experience.
Unless, and I've been in this situation, we were planning a bear event one time, and we thought we ordered enough vegetarian based on the survey that we had sent out, but we had a bunch of people who were meat eaters that decided to eat the vegetarian, and we ran out of vegetarian for the vegetarian people.
We did that at
vegetables at a bear event are just sides. No matter how you slice, they're just sides for the meat eaters.
I had a friend who he decided to hold kind of like a birthday party at his house over this last summer, and did it as sort of like he was gonna like cook like hot dogs and burgers and stuff like that. And to his credit, he was like, "Hey, Will, I got some of these beyond like brats, and I'm going to make you a couple of them and have them ready. And this is definitely nothing to do with Shang-Chi, but fuck it, we're here. And when I get there, I'm ready to eat, and I grab one, and then someone else goes, "Oh, those look good. I've been wanting to try them," and gets those and starts loading up the plate. And I was good. I already had mine, but I was just like, well, but what if I wanted more? Those are
yeah. So you bust out the big "fuck you" and just take the plate, take it back.
It's it's, to be fair, like it's when I started, like, for things like that, just like make sure I can always at least bring enough to like fend for myself if need be.
Yeah. Well, it's unfortunate that you have to do that. At bear events, there's certainly no end of food to be had. But let that be a lesson to you meat eaters. Let the veggie people have their veggies. Come on. All right. Well, I think we've expended our talking points maybe on Shanxi at this point, if we're talking about vegetarianism at bear barbecues. But any final thoughts on Shang-Chi before we move to wrap this mofo up?
Yeah, for me, nothing really new other than I did have fun with this movie more than I have with most of the Marvel stuff that we've seen lately. Black Widow. I mean, I like Black Widow, but I just had a lot more fun with this one.
Yeah, there were so many things that this film had to juggle. It had to juggle a huge legacy of not great portrayal of Asian characters in American movies. It had to balance that with literally Marvel's same issues with that, between the way they portrayed the Ancient One in Doctor Strange as a white woman, the way they kind of like tap danced around like the whole Mandarin thing in Iron Man 3, and the fact that all of these things have sort of like weird roots in the comics. I think they had so many things, so many delicate items they had to keep afloat, that I'm just really appreciative for how much care and love they seem to have for it. And I think a lot of that comes from, I mean, of course, the director and all of the cast and everyone like that, but you definitely feel, Simu Liu's lead role here on this. He does a fantastic job wearing so many different things. And then you follow him on Twitter and you see just what an energetic presence and what a positive role model and spokesman he is, a cheerleader for like everything that was going right with this film. And also someone who's not afraid to, even hold his own, hold the Marvel money bags to account when he feels that they've kind of stepped out of line. So I think there's so many things that had to come together really well here. There were issues, there were nitpicks, there were some things I think could have been better, but I think this could have been way, 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 way worse in a lot of different ways, and I'm very appreciative for what they pulled off. I've got a question. Which cat did that?
That was Kira. I have this really cool crystal thing on my desk that she just totally knocked over. So thanks, Kira. She's now plopped herself down and is rubbing herself on my microphone swing arm. So I have to stop. I love you, but stop. Thank you. Anyway. Johannes, what about you, friend? Any final thoughts on Shang-Chi?
Like I said in the beginning, I think it's a good movie, and I think it's refreshingly different from the rest of the Marvel universe in that, and I think that's nice. Like contrasting to Black Widow, this one is a lot better, like a lot better, and it's actually kind of getting me excited for this new wave. Hopefully, we'll see what happens, but it's different enough that I was actually happy to see a Marvel movie for quite a while because again, like they're all very samey, and this one stuck out as not necessarily being that. So I took that out of it. I frequently rant about movies that are very long, and I think this is one of those movies that's a little too long, but it does a lot of things right, and that's great. So yeah, I recommend seeing it.
Very good. Well, I really appreciate your call out, Johannes, about this film maybe exciting you for more of these. I guess it's phase 4, right? This new wave of films that's coming. Of course, we've got Eternals coming, Spider-Man Far From Home, Doctor Strange, The Multiverse of Madness. There's a whole lot coming our way. Yeah, and I'm kind of getting excited too. I think one of the good things this movie did was to kind of plant some seeds and kind of dig up the ground a little to get ready for more things to be planted. So I'm looking forward to what's coming our way as well. I'm going to try and keep my Marvel fatigue at bay as best I can, but we've got like 4 movies coming up in the span of 5 months. So who knows? We'll see. But I do know, Johannes, it was an absolute treat having you with us this week to help us review this film. Johannes, for anyone that maybe missed the beginning of the show, if you wouldn't mind, just again, real quick, where can people find Movie Mistrial if they want to check out the show or if they want to interact with you folks through social?
Yeah, socials at Movie Mistrial on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. www.moviemistrial.com is where you find our podcast, or in any major podcast app. Happy to connect. Happy to hear what you have to say about my maybe sometimes misguided nitpickings of classic movies.
Awesome. Well, if you ever need a bailiff in your courtroom or something, let us know, and maybe we'll come keep the peace.
A Judge Judy.
Well, I mean, happy to have you on at some point.
Yeah, we'd love to join you. But
gotta be careful about having me on, because I feel like I would just use Phoenix Wright lines like nonstop. Objection! Objection!
Will you both approach your bench, please?
Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. Well, listeners, definitely check out Movie Mistrial. It's a fantastic show. Johannes, thank you again so much for being here. Real quick, in case anybody wants to catch up with us, Jim, where can folks find you online?
You can talk to me or tweet at me on Twitter. My handle there is at JJP Out West. All one word, at JJP Out West, or just hit me up on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico, right here.
All right, awesome. And Will, how about you? Where can folks interact?
So you can find me on Twitter. My handle there is at Whatever Cove. You can find me on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis. I'm not the only one there, so make sure you got the right one. I'm the one with the beard. Send me a message first. I've been getting a lot of, it's been like this for way too long, but there's a lot of bots out there. So just send me a message so I know that you're a real human being. And finally, I log every movie that I watch, because I am, I don't know, probably there's something wrong with me. But I log every movie that I watch on Letterboxd.
You could say anal. We already determined that we have the explicit, tag. So
well, I feel like with this audience, they might misinterpret that statement. But
Iron Fist,
or correctly interpret it. I don't know. But letterboxd.com, anything that I watch, I log. You can make an account. You can make lists. Give me a follow. I'll give you a follow back.
All right, excellent. And you can find me on Facebook. Just look for Brad Harris. I'm the one that probably has Chub Chaser Bear friends in common with you. Again, though, please send a message first so I know you're not a very clever bot in bear disguise. You can also find me on Twitter at iBradPro. And remember, you can catch all of our past episodes online. Really easy. Just Google Movie Bears Podcast. But if you want to directly get there, go to moviebearspodcast.com. Will is our web wizard who has put all of our past content online for you to review. Of course, you can also find the show at all the major podcast outlets. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, etc., etc. Catch up on back episodes. Y'all, this was episode 414. It seems like we just celebrated 400 like 2 weeks ago. But we're 14 weeks past that, even more.
On our way to 420. Very quick here.
Oh, goodness. We're going to have to pick like a Cheech and Chong movie or something.
Right around the corner.
Just everyone make sure you don't have any P tests at work lined up for the day after that episode.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, folks, thanks so much for hanging out with us this week. We had a lot of conversation happening in the live chat. We didn't get to read every comment online, but we were kind of following along. And the amount of knowledge that you folks have, especially about Marvel stuff, astounds me. Angel, you get the award for most Marvel knowledge, I think, on this episode. If we had an actual award, we'd mail it to you. We don't. So here's a spiritual award. Congratulations.
Stan Lee used to give in the back of the Marvel comics when someone sent in like a correction to like a kind of a continuity error, he would award what was called the No Prize. So I feel it's only fitting that we award, especially since we don't have anything, we award Angel the No Prize for this episode.
There you go. All right, everybody. We will see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.